Imagine being told you can't go home for at least a year and a half. That's the reality now facing thousands of Alaskans after a historic storm battered the state's western coast, leaving many to wonder whether home will ever be the same. Over the weekend of October 12th, the remnants of Typhoon Halong slammed into western Alaska with the force of a Category 2 hurricane. Wind gusts topped 100 miles per hour, and water rose more than 6 feet above normal high tide. The record-breaking storm surge inundated the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, a vast, low-lying stretch of tundra where 49 remote, mostly indigenous communities sit with no roads to the outside world. The human toll is staggering. More than 2,000 people have been forced from their homes. At least one person was killed, and 2 others remain missing in Kwigillingak after their house washed out to sea. In Kipnuk, an initial survey found 121 homes, about 90% of the village, destroyed. In Kwigillingak, every single home was damaged, and roughly 30 dozen floated off their foundations. A state emergency official called the situation in Kipnuk catastrophic. Stories of survival are equally dramatic. Coast Guard and Alaska National Guard crews hoisted dozens to safety, some from houses drifting in open water, while families flashed phone lights for rescue. Residents watched helplessly as homes floated miles inland in the darkness. Now, one of the largest airlifts in Alaska's history is underway. Massive C-17 transport planes are ferrying evacuees from regional hubs to emergency shelters 500 miles away in Anchorage. The city has converted a sports arena and convention center into temporary housing and is prepared to shelter up to 1,600 people. Governor Mike Dunleavy has declared a state of emergency and requested a major disaster declaration from President Donald Trump, a move that would unlock critical federal aid. Alaska's congressional delegation says the scale of destruction is beyond the state's capacity to handle alone. The toughest challenge lies ahead: recovery during an Arctic winter. State officials warn many evacuees may not return home for at least 18 months. As temperatures plummet, construction will soon grind to a halt, and every plank of lumber, generator, and nail must be flown or barged into these roadless villages.
Power systems, sanitation facilities, and even airstrips have been damaged or destroyed. For displaced residents, the future is uncertain. Authorities hope to move families from mass shelters to hotels and eventually into more stable housing. Yet many may have to start new lives in unfamiliar cities, far from the subsistence hunting and fishing that define village life. The disaster was not unforeseen. A 2022 report prepared for local indigenous communities warned that severe flooding was becoming more frequent and listed community relocation as an urgent need. The storm has turned that warning into an immediate humanitarian crisis and underscored the long-term threats facing western Alaska. For now, the priority is shelter, food, and safety. But the question looms: when the waters recede and winter sets in, where and how will thousands of Alaskans rebuild their lives?
If you've walked past the school or playground lately, you've probably heard it. A gleeful chorus of kids shouting 6-7 while wobbling one hand like a scale. To bewildered adults, it sounds like a secret code or a math lesson gone rogue. In truth, it means absolutely nothing, and that's exactly why it's everywhere. The 6-7 craze is textbook brain rot culture. Gen Alpha's term for goofy, low-stakes content that's fun precisely because it annoys adults. The chant's power lies in its meaninglessness. Everyone can join in, and no one can correct you. Tracing the meme takes us back to late 2024, when Philadelphia rapper Skrilla released Doot Doot 6'7". A throwaway lyric, 6'7", I just bipped right on the highway, was catchy bait for social media editors. Because Skrilla never explained the numbers, TikTok had a blank slate. By early 2025, the sound-anchored highlight edits of Charlotte Hornets guard LaMelo Ball, famously 6'7", and clips of high school phenom Taylon K. Kinney swaggering into gyms. Views snowballed, and the hand gesture emerged, palm up, seesawing, as if weighing the two numbers. March 2025 delivered the tipping point. A YouTuber filmed an AAU game where a grinning boy, instantly christened the 67 kid, leaned into the camera, flashed the gesture, and hollered, 6'7". The clip detonated across platforms, turning a niche audio clip into a playground anthem almost overnight. When students returned from summer break, teachers nationwide confronted an unexpected disruption. Any mention of 6 or 7, a math problem, a page number, even a locker combination, could launch a chant that rippled through the room. Lessons stalled under a rising tide of 6'7s. Schools tried everything. Some banned the phrase, only to discover that forbidding a meme is like adding lighter fluid. Others weaponized it. One fifth-grade teacher used the 6'7 as a call and response to regain silence. Another assigned a 67-word essay on the trend, written in 6 to 7 minutes. A few embraced "kill the cringe," dramatically misusing the chant until students begged them to stop. None of this is new. A century ago, kids said 23 skidoo. More recently, they yelled yeet. The recipe is the same, a nonsense phrase, instant camaraderie, and adults left scratching their heads. What's different now is speed. TikTok can launch an off-the-cuff moment into every cafeteria by lunch and burn it out just as fast. Which brings us to the shelf life of 6'7". Now that it's been parodied on shows like South Park and dissected in staff meetings, the meme's cool factor is already fading. Once everyone is in on the joke, it stops feeling like an inside joke. So if the kids in your life won't stop chanting 6'7", relax. They're not speaking in code and they're not protesting math. They're doing what kids have always done, forging microcultures, testing boundaries, and reveling in shared absurdity. And like every playground fad, this one will disappear, probably right around the time adults finally catch on. Welcome to AI TV News. A landmark international deal to clean up one of the world's biggest polluting industries has collapsed. The plan would have created the first ever global carbon tax for the shipping industry, but it was abandoned after the United States threatened sanctions against nations that supported it. Today, we explain what this deal was, why it fell apart, and what it means for the future of our planet and the global economy. First, let's look at the industry at the center of this story: global shipping. More than 80% of everything you buy, from electronics to food, travels across the ocean on massive ships. This constant movement of goods is the backbone of the world economy, but it comes at a high environmental cost. The global shipping industry is responsible for nearly 3% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. To put that in perspective, if global shipping were a country, it would be the world's 6th largest emitter, ranking between Japan and Germany. For years, these emissions, which mostly occur in international waters, have been difficult to regulate. To tackle this, the International Maritime Organization, or IMO, a United Nations agency that regulates shipping, spent years negotiating a plan. The result was the Net Zero Framework. Agreed to in principle back in April 2025, this framework was set to be a historic first, a global carbon pricing system for an entire industry.
The idea was simple. Starting in 2028, ships that emitted more carbon than a set limit would have to pay a fee. Think of it like a pollution toll on the high seas. The money raised, estimated to be in the billions of dollars, had two main goals. First, to fund the development of cleaner fuels like green ammonia or hydrogen, and to reward ships that were already using low-emission technology. Second, a portion of the funds would go to climate-vulnerable nations, particularly small island states, to help them cope with the effects of climate change. The framework was a key part of the IMO strategy to get the shipping industry to net zero emissions by around 2050. Supporters included a broad coalition of countries, including the European Union, China, India, Japan, Brazil, and Canada. However, the plan faced fierce opposition from the United States. The Trump administration launched a strong campaign against the deal, which President Donald Trump labeled a scam tax and a global green new scam tax on shipping on social media. The U.S. government argued the framework would create an unsanctioned global tax regime that would raise costs for American businesses and consumers, with some estimates forecasting a 10% or more increase in global shipping costs. The administration also called the deal a European-led neo-colonial export of global climate regulations. This opposition wasn't just verbal. The U.S. threatened significant retaliatory measures against any country that voted for the plan. These threats included sanctions on officials, visa restrictions for vessel crews, and even blocking ships from entering U.S. ports. Joining the U.S. in opposition were major oil-producing nations like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, as well as Russia. The showdown happened at the IMO's headquarters in London. What was expected to be a formal adoption of the regulations turned into what the IMO's own Secretary General described as chaos. Faced with intense pressure from the U.S., the delegation from Singapore introduced a motion to postpone the final vote for 1 year. Saudi Arabia called for that motion to be put to a vote. The proposal to delay passed narrowly. 57 countries in favor, 49 against, and 21 abstaining. The landmark deal was officially put on ice. The reaction was swift. Environmental groups called the delay a missed opportunity and a major setback, warning that every delay makes the transition to clean shipping harder and more expensive. The United Nations echoed that sentiment. Even the shipping industry itself expressed disappointment. The International Chamber of Shipping, which represents over 80% of the world's commercial fleet, stated that the industry needs clear global regulations to make the massive investments required for decarbonization. The delay creates uncertainty, which could stall over $50 billion in planned green shipping investments. Politically, the outcome is seen as a victory for the Trump administration's America First approach and a blow to international climate diplomacy, especially for the European Union. It highlights the immense difficulty of achieving global consensus on climate action when it clashes with national economic interests. So what happens now?
The net zero framework isn't completely dead. Technical work will continue over the next year. However, the political momentum has been lost. The 1-year delay gives opponents time to rally more support to defeat the deal entirely when it comes up for a vote again in October 2026. For now, the world's plan to clean up the high seas is left drifting in uncertain waters.